When they see a young guy who's really inquisitive, a lot of people help. Like, you just have to ask. As Steve Jobs once said, just know how to ask people, right? So I just asked around how to go about this.
Was there something that you would have done differently looking back?
Yeah. I mean,
At a time where India itself is sort of pressured with child malnutrition, what do you think are the primary barriers to low RUTF and RUSF adoption in India?
That's a golden question. A lot of people ask me that. In India, the problem is that there is a huge internal disagreement within the government in terms of the numbers of severe acute malnourished children.
With WHO and UNICEF sort of encouraging local manufacturing, how do you see Nuflower sort of adopting its processes to align with Make in India?
Let's be clear what we do. I would say 95 to 98% of our raw materials is sourced from India. We're not doing what a lot of folks in the country are doing, which is importing parts from China and then assembling it here and then shipping it out. We're not doing that. Most of the stuff that we do is sourced from India. I think we've been doing that since 2017. Quality, price, scale, these three things are still very important. But so is, what are you doing for sustainability? How are you taking care of the environment, ensuring your carbon footprint is as efficient as possible? Ultimately, if there are children and even adults dying because of lack of food in Africa or in Middle East or in other parts of the world, it's a problem for all of us. This is the 21st century. We simply can't be living in times where we just let this happen.
So, what does it take to build with both urgency and care? To hold the scale in one hand and purpose in another? In an era of speed and disruption, who are the ones still building from their heart? So, welcome back to Build With Shreya, the podcast where ideas and stories inspire you to build something extraordinary. Our today's guest is someone who builds where most hesitate, turning blueprints into bridges of hope. Akshat Khandelwal, who is the founder and CEO of Nuflower Foods and Nutrition, which manufactures therapeutic supplements used in humanitarian missions across more than 40 countries. So, from tackling severe acute malnutrition through partnerships with UNICEF and WFP, his work has impacted over 1.8 million lives. Akshat's work sits at the intersection of public health, industrial innovation, as well as nation building. So let's dive into his journey from studying history and politics at UCL to leading Nuflower Foods in India and uncover how entrepreneurs can create businesses with both scale and purpose. So let's welcome Akshat to Build With Shreya. So Akshat, it's a great pleasure to have you on this podcast.
Yeah, great to be here.
So I wanted to understand, Nuflower, it has started in a time where companies are chasing valuation over purpose. And Nuflower is all about purpose. Right.
Yeah.
So I wanted to understand from you, what were the key moments that led to the founding of Nuflower? Was there a personal inflection point where you wanted to start something which was, dealing with something like food security, something that sort of positively impacted children all over the world?
I'm going to rewind a little bit here. And what I will say is that, when I was in college, and I think when I was young, I always had this drive in me that I wanted to build something with a certain sense of purpose, with a certain sense of goal that has a wide-ranging impact, right? And at that point of time, I also had inkling to be a writer, which I still do. I still write on the side very regularly, right? And when I got out of college, I got into journalism for a bit. I was with the Indian Express Group. I was an editorial writer for the Financial Express. But when I was there, I was writing editorials, but after a point of time, it got a little boring and I was not getting the same level of satisfaction. And I was sort of looking for something to do that I could apply myself for 12 hours, 10 hours a day, that I could really build from scratch, right? And I think, so I quit journalism. And right after that, I was trying to get into those management consultancy routes, right? Which a lot of my batchmates, a few of them actually, were getting into, and they were the ones who were recommending me the whole Bain, McKinsey, BCG, business analyst positions. And while I was exploring that, I got to know, so I have a family friend, he's a pediatrician, and he told me about these medical therapies that were being manufactured all over the world, particularly in Europe and America, right? And these were therapies where, in a 100-gram pouch, in a 92-gram pouch, you're giving all the nutrients that a body needs, and you're sending these medical therapies to the most disadvantaged regions across the globe. So East Africa, Central Africa, West Africa, Middle East, and so on and so forth. And he told me that that is something that should be manufactured in India, because the raw materials, the food, pharma, engineering talent, the cost of labor, it's all there in India. And I kind of saw that and I ran with it. Right. It also helped me satiate this intense passion I had for manufacturing. I was very intellectually obsessed with manufacturing when I was in college. Just, because I was always wondering, why is it that India does not have the same level of manufacturing intensity that China has, right? So it kind of satiated that part. It satiated the part where I wanted to build something with a certain social purpose. And it was something I could apply myself 10, 12 hours a day. And I think at that age, I just ran with it. I didn't know how tough it was going to be. I just thought that this makes sense. It's a great business idea purely on business terms. India is a low cost manufacturer. It has all the raw materials. It has got the pharma and the food engineering talent. It has great social purpose, right? And it's going to be a great story of, you're making something in India and you're exporting from it. So I just ran with it.
So I'm now curious, what are the challenges that you actually went through? Because you just dived into it.
Yeah, everything. I mean, I would say that, so I was 23, 24 when I started, right? So I was kind of stupid to know what sort of challenges I'm going to face. So everything at that point of time, right? Everything, because when I started this, I didn't know much about either building businesses. I didn't know much about food manufacturing. I didn't even know much about, how to set up a quality system, how to set up a manufacturing plant. How much does anyone know at the age of 24, right? Yeah, so starting from basically setting up a plant, like setting up the pilot plant. So the first plant that we set up was a pilot plant, right? So starting from there, just figuring that out. And how do you figure that out? You just keep poking your nose. You hire one guy and you learn as much as you can from him. And then you talk to 5 other people in the industry and you tell them, sir, I don't know anything, or madam, I don't know anything. This is what I want to do. How do I go about it? And you ask people. And then, people usually help, especially, when they see a young guy who's really inquisitive. A lot of people help. Like, you just have to ask. As Steve Jobs once said, just know how to ask people, right? So I just asked around how to go about this. Okay.
Was there something that you would have done differently looking back?
So knowing what I know now, obviously, a lot of things I would have done differently, right? Knowing what I know now, but I'm not sure if that's the right question to ask. It's this Chinese proverb that I learned about very recently. A man who blames others has not arrived. A man who blames himself is halfway there, and a man who blames no one has reached. So I don't think regret is professional. Like, I don't think it's good to, because at that point of time, you're dealing with sorts of, you don't know much, right? So you have to be easy on yourself. You can't be too hard on yourself. But what I would say is that if I had known how hard it would be for me to set it up, I don't think I would have started. Right?
It's a good thing that you didn't know.
Yeah. So,
sometimes unknowingness is good.
That's how you learn how to swim, right? Like, if you always think about how deep the pool is or how deep the sea is, you're never going to learn how to swim, right? So sometimes you just have to shut your eyes and take the plunge. And that's what happened.
So you chose a sector which is mission critical to global future, like food security, and with Nuflower supplying to over 40 plus countries. At a time where India itself is sort of pressured with child malnutrition, even though, it has the manufacturing capability, but there are challenges around palatability issues, cost concerns, as well as a debate around traditional versus packaged foods. So what do you think are the primary barriers to low RUTF and RUSF adoption in India?
So in India, that's a golden question. A lot of people ask me that. So I'll tell you, so here's how I look at the situation, okay? So the way I look at it, in India, the first problem that we face, so let's be clear, we make food for the acute malnourished, not for the simply malnourished, but those who are moderately and severely wasted, right? Those are conditions that are almost next to starvation levels, right? Where your MUAC is less than 110 and so on and so forth, right? Now, in India, the problem is that there is a huge internal disagreement within the government in terms of the numbers of severe acute malnourished children. So if you look at the National Family Health Survey, right, it would say that about 70 to 90 lakh children, which is 7 to 9 million children under the age of 6, are severely wasting, That's quite a high number,
Of
right? You
course.
would say, oh wow, that's almost 30-40% of the global load, right? But if you look at the numbers published by the Women and Child Ministry, which is actually the ministry that does community support, community management of malnutrition, they would say the number is actually 5 lakhs or 6 lakhs, right? So there's
So
a
there's a
huge internal, so there's a huge
misrepresentation. Yeah.
discrepancy within the Indian branches. So
Mhm.
someone has to first solve that. And so that we have a clear problem statement, we have a clear identification of the problem. The other thing is India already has a policy. It has a program for malnourished children. It's called ICDS,
Of course.
Integrated
Yeah.
Child Development Scheme. They have their own nutrition base that they use, which is basically like this wheat soya blend or something on those lines, like similar to that. Um, right. And what we do is quite different from that, because there it's mostly a carb heavy, sugar heavy, and good protein supplement that goes in. We tend to give a bit of a balance
Mhm.
from proteins, fats, and carbohydrates. Now the question there is, like, how do you convince um,
Yes.
the Indian establishment that maybe this is the alternative
Yeah.
recipe, right? So we've tried, but the problem is, like, I think what happens is there are cost concerns, which I don't think are very valid, because if you look at severe acute malnourished children,
Mhm.
the mortality rate is very high. I mean, there are figures that would say that the case fatality ratio is almost 20%. Uh, so they'll give you cost issues, and also whenever we get in discussions with some folks within the decision making bodies who are deciding on these things, what tends to happen is people get transferred, all of that, and then you have to start from all over again. So it's a slow process. We are trying, but I would say these two are the biggest problems, right? There's already a program that they have. There's a misalignment on the nature of the problem, because if you think that the severe acute malnourished children in India, they're not, if it's just 5 to 6 lakhs, that's a very small load. You don't need to look out of the window and look at what the world is doing in terms of nutritional interventions, right? That probably is what I would recommend that we ought to figure out. But we would always be glad to work with, Indian people who are in the decision-making bodies and the bureaucracies in India, just talking about malnutrition, talking about what sort of recipes, what sort of nutritional interventions we can provide. We'll always be happy for that.
With humanitarian budgets under pressure globally, is there innovation around new funding models for nutritional interventions, like pooled procurements or outcome-based financing,
Yeah.
or public-private partnerships?
So first, let's be clear why the humanitarian budgets are being cut. The biggest reason behind that is, the drastic decrease in USAID funding. USAID used to be one of the biggest contributors to all sorts of humanitarian budgets across the world, actually, right? And I think we all know what happened in the past sort of 4 or 5 months. I don't need to go into that. And there's been a drastic retrenchment, right? Now, obviously, that has thrown a lot of these international organizations that take this funding into a bit of a crisis mode, right? And my personal view is, see, we are, like I said, manufacturers. We are the supply chain partners. We don't do the last mile work, which is, actually taking the food and ensuring the severely acute malnourished children is eating it and their lives are being saved, and so on and so forth. So we don't really do that bit. But what I can tell you is that the way forward, my personal view is that the way forward is, you've got all these big international philanthropists. I think they're stepping up. You've got obviously the BMGF, the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, or the derivative of that. I think it's split now. Then you've got the Bezos Foundation, and you've got a bunch of other philanthropic non-governmental foundations, right? They are stepping up. I also think that the other biggest economies should step up, and I'm talking about Europe, Japan, India as well, because now we are the fourth largest economy in the world, and China too, right? So maybe they could start stepping up, because ultimately, if there are children and even adults dying because of lack of food in Africa or in Middle East or in other parts of the world, there are parts of Asia also where we supply, right? It's a problem for all of us. This is the 21st century. We simply can't be living in times where we just let this happen, right? So if we can do something to save it, I think that's how it should be done. I would also say that, in India, one of the things I've seen is the growth of these health care startups targeted around health for the disadvantaged in India. But what they're doing is they're not really trying to work with the government. What they're doing is they're working with CSR contributors, all
Of
these
course.
big corporate CSR verticals, right? And I've seen a growth of that, and I know some of them, and they're doing great work. So I think that is also one good way of at least kickstarting that in India.
With WHO and UNICEF sort of encouraging local manufacturing,
Yeah.
how do you see Nuflower sort of adopting its processes to align with Make in India and at the same time meet the WHO pre-qualification standards?
I think we've been doing that since 2017. So our first year of operation we started in 2014-15. 2014, I kind of thought about it, and for a year, I was just figuring it out. So I'm not sure how productive that year was. But anyways,
asking people.
yeah,
learning.
asking people, figuring it out. Should I really do this? All of that was happening. But 2015, I would say, is when we really built our first pilot plant. And 2017 is when we started our production. Like our first big batch, for commercial purpose was in 2017. And I think we've been doing it in some ways since then. Because let's be clear what we do. 98%, I would say 95 to 98% of our raw materials is sourced from India. We're not doing what a lot of folks in the country are doing, which is importing parts from China and then assembling it here and then shipping it out. We're not doing that. Most of the stuff that we do is sourced from India.
Okay.
It's grown in India and it's sourced from India. So our economic activity creates a whole lot of other positive externalities, right? We are exporting it. So even today, whether I look at LNS vertical, the RUTF, RUSF vertical, or whether I look at the peanut butter, 90% of my revenues, between 85 and 90% of my revenues are export driven, right? So yeah, and then we are adhering to the best quality standards in the world because the kind of international organizations we work with, they have very stringent quality standards. That is actually the key in our line of work, right? And to be able to meet their quality standards, pass their audits, be able to supply to them at scale, with a certain price point in mind. That's the work that we've done. So in some ways, we are completely fitting in the Make in India objective by our government, which is what is Make in India? They want entrepreneurs to make in India, but make at global quality, at competitive pricing, and export. We're doing all three of those.
So as you said that, sort of sourcing.
And
yeah.
Sorry to interrupt. We're saving lives, but please proceed. Yeah.
Okay. So as you said that you're sourcing all of your raw materials from India itself, right? So we see a global shift in how governments as well as impact investors want to assess companies, So it's not enough to say we are on a mission, right? They want to see dashboards, they want to see where everything is coming from. So how are you adapting at Nuflower, when it comes to ESG audits or different frameworks you're evaluating on? Any traceability tools that you've sort of embedded in your operations to make sure that you're able to sort of live up to those credibility assessments?
It's very interesting that you asked that because to some of our clients, one of the things that they've started asking for before when we submit our bid, our pricing is an ESG, like they ask us to fill an ESG calculator, an ESG questionnaire, right? And where we just have to give them an idea about our carbon footprint, et cetera, et cetera. So all of that is happening, but it is part of the equation. So some of the international organizations that we work with, they do care about that. It is part of the equation.
Especially Europe.
Especially in Europe, because in Europe, these things are prioritized a lot more.
They also have carbon tax from April 2026.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. So I think that's why these things are now coming in. But what I would say is that right now it is still a very small factor in the equation, which the decision-making matrix that allows them to decide who to procure from, but it is something that they've started thinking about. And I think going forward, that part is only going to increase in the decision-making matrix, right? So quality, price, scale, these three things are still very important. But so is, what are you doing for sustainability? How are you taking care of the environment? How are you taking care of ensuring your carbon footprint is as efficient as possible? With
ESG audits coming into the picture, there is a risk that companies sort of turn it into a check the box kind of an activity and not
Yeah.
really take it that seriously. So what are the kind of internal conversations you have within your team to ensure that those metrics have actual meaning rather than just being mechanical?
See, I mean, the way I look at it, the only way you can actually take it seriously if your clients ask you, if the organizations who you are supplying
It's
to,
all about accountability at
it's
that
all
point?
about accountability. It is. That's the harsh truth,
Of
right?
course.
Because what tends to happen is every time there is the most important thing in any company is, client servicing and, ultimately you're making a product or a service and you're supplying to a client,
Of
right?
course.
If the client does not deem an aspect important, you may personally deem it, but, slowly and steadily, it sort of always gets pushed out in favor of things that are much more important for the client, right? So we are lucky in that sense that we have clients who really care about us. The kind of, like I said, the international orgs that we supply to, they do care about us. They do care about these things, right? So what you do is, I think, if you, as an organization, have a lot of integrity, then you report the truth.
Of course.
And if you're reporting the truth, you will have to then register some decline in carbon footprint or some increase in efficiency as far as the ESG goals are concerned over a period of time. And that's what we're trying to do. So I think that is the best way of going about it, to not make it a tick a box thing. Tick a box becomes, when it's not really important, it's not critical in the running of the business or in the running of the organization that you're doing. So then it's just a tick a box, because what happens is the senior management is like, oh, we'll do that later. We'll do that next week. Let's just do these. Yeah, they deprioritize it, right? Ultimately, it's all about priority, because you can't do everything.
So with the global donors and agencies wanting to see, live data, real time statistics, dashboards, is this something that Nuflower has also started, informing these agencies about, including live data around batch status, expiry dates, etc.
So I think right now there is a impetus, like there is a nudge towards that level of monitoring.
Okay.
And with the expectation that maybe in a few years, maybe we can arrive at that. Okay. But right now, that is not the most important thing for the humanitarian aid ecosystem. In fact, right now, the most important thing is the crisis in funding, right? Which is, and how do you replace that, right? So I think that is something that I think at some point of time, they're going to be working towards, but it's not the most important thing.
So people often overlook how complex humanitarian nutrition can be. You need to think about ensuring nutrient stability in extreme conditions. So, what is the kind of product innovation that is happening at Nuflower when it comes to packaging, shelf life, and sort of optimizing how you're, innovating across measuring field impacts and stability of the micronutrients?
Yeah. So I would say, as far as packaging is concerned, packaging and shelf life is concerned, the most important thing we have to do is, because our product, the way the product is made, it has very low moisture. So anything that has very low moisture or very low water activity, its shelf life is extended, because shelf life is impacted by the growth of bacteria. Bacteria grows in moisture. You have low. That's why chocolates have very long shelf life, right? So the most important thing that we do, other than obviously making a low moisture, low water activity product, is to pack it in nitrogen flush pouches. So every pouch that we pack it, these are 92 to 100 gram pouches. Every pouch that we pack our product to, it's flushed with nitrogen, so it displaces the oxygen. So the oxidation process, the oxidative process that you must have read about in your physics or your chemistry class, right? That does not take place, or that that drastically slows down. So what ends up happening is we are able to deliver, because of the nature of the product, the way we blended it, the way our machines have gone about blending it, we are able to deliver a shelf life of more than 24 months for our main SKUs, right? And that is what allows the durability of this product for humanitarian use. Because what tends to happen is sometimes, if, let's say, you ship it to Somalia, and there are some issues there due to any sort of instability, sometimes the product is going to be at the port for more than 3 months before it reaches the end users, right? There are all sorts of problems that one could sort of face when taking these products to the last mile. So you need that shelf life.
And as far as the product itself is concerned, to cut costs or to increase the cultural adaptability as well, a lot of producers are testing with
Yeah.
alternate recipes, like Valid Nutrition in Malawi and UK. They're looking at sorghum, soya, maize
Yeah,
based
yeah, yeah.
recipes. So is Nuflower also planning to?
Yes,
Yeah.
we've experimented with soy recipes, but the problem with soy is that as an ingredient, it has all sorts of quality assurance problems because the way it's produced in India, especially,
Okay.
it has a lot of microbial load. So how
Okay.
do you get rid of that? So we are kind of exploring that. But we also have a chickpea recipe with us where we've sort of replaced peanuts with
Okay.
chickpea. So peanut right now is the base for our product, right? So we have chickpea recipes. We've also experimented with a lot of internally. We've also experimented with a lot of millet recipes, and a lot of lentil-based recipes, etc. But what I would say, and I think this is what a lot of my friends in the humanitarian ecosystem may disagree with me slightly, is that peanut remains the superfood here, because peanuts, they tend to be cheap and they have that great balance between proteins and fats, which is what you need to make a really nutrient product. So I'm not sure whether we can see peanuts going away as the main source of protein and fats. Peanuts and milk, that's what goes in RUTF, RUSF, right? But yeah, other than that, we've been doing a whole lot of stuff.
There was a time when therapeutic foods had to be flown in from France, UK, Canada. But now Nuflower has actually reversed the flow. It's manufacturing in India,
Yeah.
and it is helping India become the global engine for nutritional resilience. So, could you walk us through the behind the scenes of what has helped it scale at a global level? What kind of certifications, partnerships did Nuflower go through? And what do you think are the key elements of the manufacturing resilience that we have in India? Is it just the low cost, skilled labor, or there's more to it?
So I'll tell you the reason why India is a good place to manufacture. It's a very hospitable place to manufacture products like ready-to-use therapeutic food, ready-to-use supplementary food, and all the other SKUs in the humanitarian aid family, is because number one, India has all the raw materials. Right, we grow a lot, so we may not have the oil and the natural gas and all of that. All of that. Obviously, we rely a lot on imports. But from a food perspective and from a food ingredient perspective, we are one of the most well endowed countries. So we have one of the biggest production of milk in the world. We have the second biggest production of groundnuts, peanuts. Right, those are the two main ingredients that go into this product. Right.
Okay.
Other than that, everything else that we do, whether it's sugar, oil, blended oil, we have our own blend. All of that is processed in India, right? So in that sense, India becomes a great place. So if you look at I don't know, production facilities in France and other parts of the world, they have to import a whole lot of these raw materials. So it's very different for them, right? Because when you import, you need to maintain a lot bigger inventories, your raw material inventory, etc. And I'm guessing the financial burden probably increases. So that's one, I would say. That's the biggest. The second, I would say, is that India has a large pool of pharma and food engineering talent, right? We have a big pharmaceutical industry. And pharma food is very similar.
Yes.
Right. Like it both of these sort
Mirror
of
each
industries,
other.
they more or less mirror each other. Pharma in some categories are a lot strict. In food also, in many categories, you're a lot strict with the clean rooms and all of that. But fundamentally, the way you design a system, it's similar. It's not the same, but it's similar. That's why in most countries, the administration that regulates food and drugs is the same. US FDA, for example. Right. So we have a huge pool of engineering talent when it comes to food and pharma. So there's a lot you can do. You can go out, you can hire talent, and you can build a company with them. You need that because without that, it's impossible. Like one of the reasons, for example, why a lot of GCCs are coming to India is because we have a lot of, computer engineering talent and all of that as well, right? So without that, it's very difficult. Right. And I would also obviously say that to a large extent, labor, the cost of labor is definitely an asset, right? Because having cheap labor means, you don't have to invest in very expensive robotic machines, which, our counterparts in developed countries do. So, so they tend to have very few people on any production line. It's always, it's as automated as they can. And that requires a lot of capex.
Yes.
Right. So definitely having, if the cost of labor, the price of labor in general is cheap, there's a whole lot of people you can give jobs to. And we are actually very proud of it. The amount of people we end up giving jobs through our enterprise. Very proud of that. So that's what I would say. That's why India sort of stands out.
When we talk about delivering humanitarian help in an emergency situation, the time becomes crucially important.
Yeah.
So how do you deal with logistic challenges when it comes to a global level? Cold chain gaps, regulatory mismatches, custom delays. I know you don't do last mile, but still, I'm sure even till the port, there would be many challenges. So if you can tell about that.
Oh, no. So they tend to be logistic challenges because most of our product is going out of the country, especially when there are geopolitical conflicts, right? So the Suez Canal was blocked, for example, for a while because of the conflict in Yemen. The Indo-Pak war means that Indian goods cannot reach Afghanistan because you either go through Iran, which is under sanctions, or you go through Pakistan, where the transit rights for Indian goods have stopped. So these kind of challenges keep cropping up. There's always a way around it. And what we basically do is, we have dispatch teams that are round the clock working with our clients, with the freight forwarders of our clients, with our own freight forwarders, and all the partners. So, you have a set of partners in the logistic chain when you're trying to export something. So you're just working with them all the time and trying to figure out a way to get it done. So there is no set formula to solve it. It's basically, where do I need to be? What is the impediment? How do I solve it? Right? And then you figure it out. So it's a very, ad hoc, case by case basis problem solving that happens. I think what you probably need is a dedicated guy or a team of a couple of 2 to 3 people sort of fixing it at all times, especially in times of high production.
So India's advantage is not just the cost advantage.
Yeah.
India also has these ready plans which are ISO and GMP compliant. It can help companies scale up super fast and be ready to meet the international standards on day one. So has Nuflower sort of also acquired such plants, or has that been a part of this strategy?
So right now, no, but as part of our expansion, because as I told you, one of the things we also want to do as a company is position Nuflower as a peanut butter manufacturer for the world. We want to do for peanut butter what chocolate manufacturers in Europe have done for chocolate, right? Right. So Europe is today known for its chocolate. Turkey is known for its hazelnut spreads. I want India to be known for its peanut butter production and all associated nut spreads, right? So as part of that expansion, we're actually exploring such a few deals just on those lines, where we take a ready-made shed, we make our own sort of ISO 8 GMP clean room, and then we sort of continue production there.
So nutraceutical manufacturing mirrors pharma to a lot of extent, robotic arms, AI vision, predictive maintenance. So what is it that Nuflower has adopted when it comes to automation technologies?
Okay.
And sort of making sure there's less human error, less downtime. So have you sort of optimized for that? Is there any solutions that you have sort of adopted?
Yeah, it's very interesting that you asked that, because we're actually working on something like that. So we got ERP implemented in our company in the past 2-3 years.
Okay.
It takes a while to get your
it does.
company on an ERP platform. I thought it would take 6 months. That's what the guy who was selling it told me. But it took us almost 2 years to get everything right? Now, the good thing about having that ready is that now you can actually train AI, LLM, chatbots on that data. So we are actually working with a company just like that. It's called Friday. Just FYI, if anyone's interested. It's called Friday. And what we are doing with them is, I think what they're trying to do is they're first of all streamlining all our data, the data warehousing and all sorts of other technical stuff that I'm not the best person to talk about, right? And then what they eventually want to do is train an AI chatbot, so that, we are just able to type, like you type in ChatGPT, tell me the data of this and this year, and you can just get that data out. So all the stuff that would take like a financial analyst 2 days to make, or maybe a week to make, it should be able to make in
well, that's a great
step. Like in half an hour, 5 minutes actually. Yeah. And also, like, just sometimes, when you're like the CEO, you're just thinking, what was my sale in March of 2023? And the traditional way is to call up your finance guy, tell him, and he'll say, okay, I'll just get back to you, and then he'll go and he'll take about an hour to get back. All you have to do is, open Slack and then just type it up, and then within 10 seconds you have the data, right? So that's what we're trying to do.
So that's an amazing
yeah.
step, forward. I think a lot of companies sort of, especially in India, they get stuck in sort of taking that step.
Yes.
And so how did you go about thinking about the ROI? Because, when you go to Indian manufacturers, that's the biggest question that they have, that, okay, I'm doing this, but then what will I get out of it?
Yeah.
So what did you decipher? What value did you see when you were opting for
Yeah, we just felt that, there were two things that we felt. Firstly, we just felt that we don't need to hire a whole lot of clerical staff, right? We can take all that money and give someone who can actually grow the company, work on business acquisition, work on internal operations optimization, work on supply chain management. We can we can do that, right? Because if you need a lot of data entry guys, it's in today's day and age, that's just not the most efficient thing. So that's how we looked at it, right? Also, I think AI systems they are a lot less error prone, right? If it's done right, if your ERP is working right, it's been stress tested, your figures are aligning, reconciling every time with the stock, etc., in the warehouses, then, and if you are able to train an AI model on that, then it just becomes a very foolproof option, right? That you can use in order to sort of do, get data, do investigations, etc., etc. Because at the management level, that's what you need. You need the weighted average price in this season. Then you need the weighted average price of the raw materials that I was buying in this season. And then you need what was my sales data then, and you need all this data. And usually, till now, even right now, because the implementation is not done, whenever I ask someone in my company, it just takes a while.
I know.
And then the fact that it takes a while, takes them a day or two, and they have to leave 5 other things to just give me that, in itself means that there is a certain inefficiency. But with the kind of technology that we have, there's absolutely no reason why every company, at least medium in scale and above, should be doing this. Absolutely no reason. Just get these things integrated. And we don't know how smart these technologies are going to be. I am surprised. I mean, they've already broken the Turing test. So we are already at a space where, you could just call up a reception at a hotel. You have no idea whether that's AI or whether that's a real person.
It's becoming closer and closer.
Yeah, I think we've crossed that benchmark.
Earlier, you would just scroll on your Instagram and you can make out.
We can make out it's AI.
But now it's just. Yeah. I mean, you can, but it's quite close.
I would say visually you can, audio you can't. Like when I speak to Grok or ChatGPT, I just feel I'm talking to a real person. Like it is like that. A very well-informed person, if I may say. So that's how you make out, oh, this guy's too informed. It has to be AI. So we don't know where these technologies are going to grow. So to adopt them as soon as possible is the best way to go forward.
3D printing is becoming a trend nowadays, and especially personalized nutrition as well. I know you don't do that yet, but what are your thoughts around personalized nutrition and using 3D printing to sort of do a very customized, individual preferences-based nutrition?
So 3D printing, I'm not the best guy to talk about that. I'm not really an expert on 3D printing. I have got artifacts in my room, 3D printed. And I have a cousin who's got a nice 3D printing machine in his room. And he does all sorts of stuff for me. But generally what I would say as far as personalized nutrition is concerned, I think it's great that, people have personalized nutrition. I think at some point of time, you do need that because, everyone's a little allergic to something or the body doesn't work with, like, for example, with me, I'm kind of like when I was young, I was massively lactose intolerant. Now I'm kind of lactose intolerant, right? I can have paneer, but I can't have raw milk even today. Like it just creates, it makes me really nauseous, right? So personalized nutrition is the way to go. Yeah, but I just think, from a manufacturing point of view, it is difficult, of course, because you're building something at scale, right? You're building something at scale and you're building it at a very competitive price point. You always want to. And because of those two factors, they work against personalization, but they work towards standardization, right? So my guess is in the short term, if we can go to a situation where we have all sorts of different kind of food products, right? Where we make each of them at scale, but the combination is personalized, right? So maybe you need to have 2 protein bars a day, or two, low carb snacks a day, and the other person needs to have 3 or 1. I think that personalization can be really successful, right? But one thing I would say is that I keep reading about. So we already obviously have the AI revolution, but we also have a robotics revolution that's happening. Not so much in India, because I think the labor here is still cheap. But if you go to factories in the US, Japan, even China now, the use of robots is everywhere.
Massive, yeah.
It's massive, right? So what happens 10 years from now? Maybe we just, like, if let's say we have those Tesla robots, those Optimus robots, if they are mass produced, if you can make 1 million, 2 million every year, then the problem of cost is solved. Labor, like production, is solved, right? You have abundance. You effectively have abundance at that
And
point
that
of
will
time.
happen. I mean, you look at mobile phones, we started with that Panasonic big handset, price
I mean,
really.
that's going to be a brave new world. Like
Yeah.
I think it's going to lead to so many challenges of all kinds. What do we do with the time that we have to begin with?
We write.
Yeah. We write. Yeah. We create.
Of course. We think.
We
create,
all have an
right?
artist within us. Like that's what I've been told.
Absolutely.
That's what we do.
And any new startups that you see, coming up in adjacent areas to your company, where you sort of see they're complementary to what you're doing and can sort of empower whatever you're doing a lot more, like into supply chain innovation or something in predictive analytics?
So obviously, the company that we are working for, our AI implementation, is a startup. They've started 6-7 months back, actually. So, but I know there are quite a few startups like that, willing to work with B2B consumers, taking them from a B2B SaaS model to a B2B AI model, right? Like where they come in and they take your data, organize it, and they put an AI model to work on it, right? So I obviously know the company I'm working with, and I know quite a few companies working that. But within the nutrition field, per se, the field that I work in, humanitarian nutrition, I think the scope is, I haven't seen much, to be very honest. It's also a byproduct of, when we think startups, you're always thinking tech.
Of course.
We're thinking too much of computer science, but tech is everything. There's food tech, there is nutrition tech, right?
I think tech is staple now.
Yeah.
Yeah, right. I think what we also need is innovation in those specific sectors.
Yeah, I think you need innovation. Exactly. I completely agree. Like, I think, it's what Peter Thiel, who's he's a great businessman, a great investor in the US. He's quite popular now.
Of course.
The founder of Palantir. He said that we've had a lot of innovation in the world of bits, and in the world of computers, etc. But outside of that, everything else, the cars that we drive, till very recently, the airplanes, they're all the same. Like, if you look at the airplanes, like, the technology has kind of been the same for the past 30-40 years, right? Like aerospace, right? Although now, again, Elon Musk, SpaceX, is changing that. And I hope the change continues. But that's what I would say, that this is the opportunity. Just like, if someone comes to me and says they want to do something cool, nice, I would say just look around you, see what needs to be improved, and just go at it, right? And see if you can do a better job than what is already being done, or if you can do something new. But to do something new, you usually need a lot of product knowledge.
Generally, if we see, nutrition gets reduced to numbers, proteins, how many calories I had, the cost per unit. And when we talk about traditional startups, the metrics are proxies for growth, whether it's GMV, the number of users acquired, right? So what are the kind of metrics you see that are important in Nuflower? Are there any internal KPIs? Because in your kind of business, success can just not be, driven by pure metrics or just users. It's also about saving lives. So what kind of impact metrics, field impact metrics are you looking at internally? Any KPIs?
So the first is obviously the top line and the bottom line, right? So revenue, and the cash profit, or whatever margin we are able to get out of it. And those figures are important, because that's what keeps the business sustainable at the end of the day, right? Number one. But number two, I would say, the second metric that we have, the way we sort of apply ourselves, is that we see to what extent were we successful in servicing the demand that came to us right? Right? How
Like a customer success.
yeah, like a customer success, because the demand does become volatile. It's been volatile for the past 1 year or so because of funding issues and all of that. So sometimes, some quarters we are 100% occupied when it comes to production. Some quarters it's less than 60%, right? So there is that fluctuation. There is no sort of like earlier when I started, I think till 23 and all, it used to be very regular demand, because everything was set. But there's been so much of fluctuation in the funding scenario with, US elections, all of the stuff I don't want to get into. Uh, the way we judge ourselves is that, okay, this was the demand that our customers wanted. Did we do a great job of supplying it in time, at the right price, and at the right quality? And quality is the most important here, right? Because that is what ensures the lives are saved, right?
Mhm.
So that's my KPI.
So, when you talk about these fluctuations in demand, is there anything you've thought about optimizing around the lean time? Like when the manufacturing facilities, the production line is, let's say, less occupied.
Yeah.
So, are you planning to sort of optimize on that as well?
Oh, that's a very good question. So yeah, so one of the things that we also do, we've already started a vertical in peanut butter. We are manufacturing peanut butter, and what tends to happen is a whole lot of resources that were dedicated towards this, they're sort of absorbed and utilized in peanut butter. My recommendation to any humanitarian aid manufacturer, so someone who's in the manufacturing of humanitarian aid, nutrition or other equipment, is to always have a diversified revenue stream, because that is what makes you resilient for the ups and downs of the funding.
So when we talk about
Yeah.
peanut butter as an commodity, it might also not have a constant demand, right? So that might also fluctuate. So how do you manage the shelf life of that product? Let's say you have a lean time in summers, so you manufacture peanut butter a lot more than maybe other months.
Yeah.
So is it acceptable maybe 2-3 months down the line for an import house to sort of get it in?
So the first thing about FMCG goods, which have a shelf life of 1 to 1.5 years at least, is that you never stock them up, right? Like you always make on demand. So when someone gives me an order, I make it for them. Or if they ask me to maintain a buffer, I make it for them. We will never have a situation where we have ready-made goods and we don't know who the buyer is, right? Okay.
So you make sure the demand
yeah,
is there.
and also the labeling is done. So we make it complete like as it is presented in a European supermarket. Like that's the level that we take it to, right? They just need to take it out and put it in the, whichever supermarket, retail chain they're putting it. So that's point one. The second point is, I would disagree here. I would say that the demand for peanut butter is actually quite regular, because people are having it as part of their daily staple, etc. And yeah, it's very regular. That's the best thing about it. Like, like once you get a few clients and this is what they're going to say. And every now and then one client would have like a dip.
Of course.
Right. And then you're like, that's okay.
So let's say
fundamentally, it's there.
So let's say the RUTF and RUSF demand is sort of, it sort of sees a uphill.
Yeah, it goes.
drive.
It goes extremely high, and then it goes a little low, and then it goes extremely high, and then it goes.
So at that time, your manufacturing facilities are, let's say, not available to manufacture peanut butter. At that time, like maybe you have lesser capacity. Let's say, do you come across occasions where you have to sort of be resistant to fulfilling demands of peanut butter because your capacity is now
so we have two different production lines for them.
Okay.
Right. So the production lines don't mix. Right. And the reason is very simple, because I think the quality standards that an LNS, RUTF, RUSF line requires, right, they're very specific. Right. The other thing is that you don't want to put new ingredients into your production line, because that brings up all sorts of issues of allergens and right, and a lot of whole compliance and regulatory issues. Right. So we avoid doing that. We don't do that. We just don't do that. Right. Number one. Number two, what I would say, however, as far as managing demand spikes is concerned, right, we try to position ourselves, like we've developed certain norms around raw material inventory keeping, and so on and so forth to manage the demand volatility.
Okay.
So sometimes the demand will go high, and we want to be able to, we want to be in a position where we can completely capture that, right? Supply it in time in 15, 20 days, 1 month, right? The factory is running 24/7. And
So
then
do you
ship
do
it out.
demand forecasting for that?
So we try to. So, like I said,
I mean, it's very volatile.
yeah.
How
So,
much can you?
like I said, till a year, 2 years back, you could easily do demand forecasting with all our clients, all the international organizations that we work with. But the problem is, in the past 1 year has been so volatile. The volatility has been quite immense that even the demand forecasting is it's a little difficult right now, to be very honest. And we understand it because we know all of these. Hopefully, the expectation, I think, is that at some point, all of these changes that are happening, they will stabilize. There'll be a new normal,
of course,
right? So you had an equilibrium, let's say 2-3 years back, and then there'll be a new equilibrium either above it or below it, right? But once that equilibrium is set, then we'll be able to forecast demand, etc., very easily. But there was a time when we could very easily do demand forecasting with our clients and organize everything very well. It's just that now, and I don't blame them, because if I were in their space, I don't know how I would, manage all these situations.
There's a growing ecosystem of mission-driven companies in the nutrition space, whether it's Plumpy Nut by Nutriset in France, or it is Innovation and Hexagon in India. So how do you view the competitive landscape in this space? Do you see any opportunities for joint actions or collaborations, like shared distribution networks or innovation?
Yeah, I mean, I think probably one area where people in my industry could collaborate is we should all get together and figure out a way to bring to light the kind of work we're doing, with the humanitarian organizations, the supply chain difficulties that are there in terms of getting these kinds of massive orders executed, right? And talk to governments all over the world about it, including India, and, the focus. And I feel this would actually increase the level of interest that governments around the world have to contribute more to these life-saving commodities, to the procurement of these life-saving goods and this life-saving nutrition. I also think that in a context like India, it could lead to the adoption of these kinds of nutritional interventions. Because my personal view is, without question, the kind of nutritional products that we make, they're the best. If you were to have something in the ready-to-eat format, in the processed format, that is the best thing to provide for malnourished or acute malnourished or severely acute malnourished children.
I know that you're diversifying into different product lines, with peanut butter also being one of your focuses, and you're now looking at low carb, high protein snack for the Indian market. So I want to learn about how you're sort of approaching that product launch.
As a nutrition company, our mission is to basically make nutritional solutions for lifestyle issues. The biggest lifestyle issue in the world, I feel, is malnutrition, the most life-threatening. So we're already figuring that out. Okay. Now, other than that, when I look at the middle classes, the people for whom food insecurity is not a problem, the middle classes, the upper middle classes, even like most of India, I would say, food insecurity today is not really a problem, right? I see the biggest problem being that of excessive intake of carbohydrates. Right. I mean, there are some surveys where 70 to 80% of our calories are coming from carbohydrates. So, you're eating your poha, your aloo paratha in the morning, you're eating your pav bhaji, your idli dosa, nothing against these things, by the way. I mean, I talk to people about it and everyone hates me for it. But, you're eating all of that in the afternoon. And then for the evening thing, you're having samosas and namkeens or noodles. And at night it's the same thing, right? Followed by sweet. So there's a lot of carb intake, right? And I feel the excessive carbohydrates are bad because of two reasons, right? One is obviously they spike blood sugar, so they set you up for diabetes. Because what is diabetes? Diabetes is insulin resistance. So the more your blood sugar is spiked, the more your insulin is spiked, and because of your insulin, if your insulin keeps spiking, at some point of time, your body is going to become insulin resistant. Now, for some people, it can happen at a very early age. Some people, it happens very late. It all depends on how much load you're subjecting your body to, or what your insulin resistance is genetically, etc., etc. But you're not. That's not the right path to be. The other thing is, we know now today that one of the biggest reasons for weight accumulation, in your fat tissues and your adipose tissues, is not so much excess calories, it's insulin spikes again and again. So when you have excess glucose in your blood sugar, right, what happens is your insulin spikes, and your insulin takes the excess glucose and then it packs it up in your fat cells. That's how weight gain works, right? So and that has been it's been a very gradual but a very permanent realization amongst nutritional circles. So back in the day, like till 10 years ago, people would say just have low calories, you'll be fine. Now everyone's focusing on ketogenic diets and low carb diets, removing the empty calories, right? So when I look at these two issues, and if you look at the National Family Health Surveys of India, you're looking at a crisis of obesity in the making, and you're looking at definitely a big crisis of diabetes in the making. And I see these as central nutritional problems in our country. So what we figured is, how do we service, how do we create value? Just as we've created value for the disadvantaged crowd, how do we create value for the people, for whom food insecurity is not a problem, but, they're having too many carbs? Like, how do we create value? And I felt that as a company, what we can do is make a ready to eat snack that is low carb and high protein in nature. So you need protein, obviously. And I think Indians, as in general, we don't eat a lot of protein. All surveys have borne that out, right? We should be eating 1 gram per kilo weight of protein. I think most Indians actually do substantially less than that, right? So we need protein. So it's going to be high protein, but it's also going to be low carb. It's not going to spike your blood sugar, and we want it to be tasty, we want it to be extremely tasty.
So most of the high protein snacks, they're mimicking the West right now in terms of format, whether it's bars, it's shakes, right? And as you said, the Indian eating habits are like poha, rice, idli, right? So, cutting down on those might seem like a threat, right? So what do you think about aligning high protein snacks with Indian eating habits to ensure that, the Indian consumer doesn't feel threatened?
I think a lot of it is about educating the people, right? So there is a misnomer within our, within Indian circles, family circles, where they're like, ghar ka khana hai to acha hai, right? Even though you could be eating, like I said, you could be eating instant noodles or anything at home, but ghar ka khana hai to acha hai, right? So we need to get out of that mindset, and I think we just need to look at the nutrients that are coming to, the goods that are actually coming to the table. And I think the way to avoid some sort of misalignment, the way to avoid offending people, is to educate them, right? And I'm not saying we need to dispense with Indian diet. I mean, I'm Indian. I eat a lot of Indian, I eat traditional Indian meals all the time. I just choose my, I just refocus my emphasis, right? So what I tend to do is I'll have a lot more paneer, right, and a lot more dal, and a lot less rice, plain rice, and a lot less rotis. And I'll avoid naan when I go out, because it's just, very high sugar spiking product, right? And I'll completely avoid sweets and all sorts of sugary, Indian delights at the end of any dinner. So I think if you educate people, and not everyone has to be this strict, of course, people can sort of have their own approaches, their own sort of journeys towards such equilibrium, such healthier equilibriums. But yeah, the key is to cut down on empty calories. And when I say empty calories, I'm specifically talking about starches, I'm talking about refined carbs, and I'm talking about sugar.
So as you said that, there's a high gap in terms of the protein intake that we are taking as Indians, even though, people are hitting the gym, they're sort of learning how to read nutritional labels. What are you which kind of consumer are you targeting? Like the elite fitness enthusiast, or the mass premium consumer who are just wanting to make better snack choices for themselves and still not feel restricted?
So obviously our product, I think, is going to be priced where most of our consumers are going to be from what we call the middle and the upper middle classes of India, right? As far as the consumer product is concerned, we already do a lot of products for the disadvantaged community. So it's about really covering the
balancing,
covering the whole spectrum of society, right? The way we understand this, the way we think about this is very simple. We look at, you've got a bell curve, right? Just put everyone on a bell curve in terms of how aware and how sensitive they are about their health. So on one hand, you have the gym bros, people who hit the gym every
Who won the
day.
six-pack abs?
Yeah, who want the six-pack abs, or even the women who want to get their leg workout very well, and they're doing their Pilates, and like they're very fit, right? You don't need to teach anything to these people. They know what they're doing. If your product is good, they'll come to it,
Right.
because they're always doing research. They're listening to 20
They're
podcasts every
prioritizing
day.
it.
Yeah, they're prioritizing it. So they've also invested time in their lives to get to know about a lot of these things, right? And then on the opposite 10%, like the other extreme, the other bleeding edge of the bell curve, you have what I call people who are not very worried about their health, right? Like who just,
Of course, they just let go. They just
they
don't.
just want to have fun, which
Yeah.
is fine. It's
Yeah.
a free country. You do what you want to do, right? So in the middle, I think there's most of us, right? Which is, people who are in that cycle of guilt, indulgence, right?
Mhm.
So you will, let's say you might end up drinking too much last night, or you might end up having too much pastry last night. So you'll be guilty. So you'll work out a lot, right?
So it's, I think there's
Like you're in that cycle,
Yeah,
and
yeah,
then you work out for a few days, and then you're like, I've done a lot and I deserve a treat. So you'll give yourself a treat, and then you feel guilty again. Do you understand?
Yeah.
So I think most of us are kind of trapped in that. And it is to them I'm targeting. Like, I think they are the ones who are the most receptive towards a snack, towards a snack that is genuinely healthy and tasty.
So it's
like genuinely healthy. Everyone says healthy and tasty, but I'm saying genuinely healthy and genuinely tasty. It is getting the macronutrients right. And I think it's tasty as hell.
What are the behind the scene challenges in developing like a high protein, low carb snack specifically for the Indian market that you're going through?
So one of the things that we wanted to do is we want to dispense with a lot of the current categories. We don't want to. I think the bar category, the bar framework in itself is not the best category for a healthy intake, because the nature of the bar means that you need some glycerine, you need sugar, you need wheat dough, you need some simple carbs to make it stand, sediment together. And if you don't use that, then the only way you can do it is by putting in a lot of fiber, right? Both of these things, they either make the product very unhealthy or not very tasty. And you may have noticed that about some protein bars in the market. I'm not going to name any, obviously. And I think, so I would say that's the biggest challenge. How do we get out of that straitjacket? How do we think outside that? And we have some ideas, but in order for me to give you a full answer, you'll have to wait.
So the health food industry in India is booming, and but there are a lot of short-lived fads. So how do you see the way around building consumer trust, which is long-term, in this industry, specifically when it's so cluttered?
I think that's a great question. I think the way to do it is to first get the science right. And that is, difficult as well, because there are all sorts of fad. One time you'll have people talk about low calorie, then low fat, then low carb, and then some will say, oh, sugar is fine, actually, if you have it in moderation. You'll have all sorts of fads coming in and going out. But I think if you get the science right, which we think we have, like I genuinely think our body does not require refined carbs and sugar. You need carbs, you need complex carbs, you need the kind of fiber rich carbs that you find in vegetables, jo chakke ki roti hoti hai, those kinds of products. You need all of that, but you really don't need empty calories, these just completely glucose spiking carbs. So I feel our science is right, because what happens that in the long run, that is what stays. So you'll have a lot of misinformation and all sorts of schools of thought, but I think in the long run, the truth emerges. In that sense, I'm very optimistic about human condition, like the nature of human discourse. So that's one. The other thing is, you got to have a reputation for quality and integrity. And there's some companies that do it very well in this country, right? Like having a reputation for quality, integrity, so that customers trust you, that the intent is there, the efforts are there, or jo likha hai wahi bik raha hai, right? If all of those things are done, I think I think if you keep at it, you'll be successful. I mean, we'll find out.
We all will find out.
Yeah.
So India's healthy snack market is out to grow from $5.58 billion in 2024 to $14 billion by 2035. And when we specifically talk about the global protein snack market, that is about to grow to $100 billion over by 2032.
Yeah.
So, what do you think about sort of these trends? Because it's not just about numbers; it's a massive shift in how people are thinking about food. What do you think for Nuflower will drive significant growth in this market with considering all of these trends sort of coming in and the way people are sort of shifting their thought process
Yeah.
around food?
So I think the key to understand here and the key to stand out here is to understand that high protein is not the only thing you need to worry about. Right. So everyone's talking about protein, 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 protein. Everyone's talking about it. The guy who makes your roti is talking about it. The guys who make curds are talking about your curd. They're talking about it. Your bar people are talking about it. Your instant noodle people, everyone's talking about it. Right. Protein, protein, protein. So one of the things that we have to understand is that is only one of the factors in an equation which gives you good health.
Mm-hmm.
And I would say probably one of the things that people are missing is the extreme pervasiveness of empty calories, extreme pervasiveness of sugar, maltodextrin. So when you look at the snack shelf, even the healthy snack shelf, right? You go to any modern trade today, look at the snack shelf. What do you have? You have products that are filled with sugar. You have products that are filled with refined carbs, You have products that are designed to just spike your glucose, right? And put you on a path towards extreme metabolic uncertainties and metabolic disorders. So someone should be fixing that, right? And putting protein will help, like adding more protein, adding more soy isolate, whey protein, which is what most of these manufacturers are doing. All of that does help. But what about all those empty calories? What about the fact that in the drinks that we have for children, again, I don't want to name brands and everything, you have so much sugar loaded along with the protein that's added. Who's going to take care of that? So we got to have those conversations as well. And I believe that is the way to stand out. That makes for good business, and it makes for a healthy society as well. So again, you're building a business, but there's a certain social value, social purpose that you're creating. Kind of takes us back to our founding ideals.
So, how are you thinking about establishing the distribution channels for the product? Like, are you looking at quick commerce as one of the options? What is the kind of value you want to provide to the consumer apart from the product? Is convenience part of it? Is instant gratification part of it? So, what are the kind of value you want to tap into when it comes to your distribution?
So one of the things I've kind of realized now is that for the next, at least the short and the medium term, till labor cost in India goes drastically high, quick com is the way Indian middle and upper middle classes are going to shop, right? Like they may try stuff at empty, but you just want to, like, if you want to order a Coke, I'm a Diet Coke guy. So if I want to order a Diet Coke or anything, I'll just order. I don't remember shopping for any FMCG product in the past 6 months. Like I think 95% of them have been on QuickCom. So QuickCom is there to stay, at least in the medium term. What happens to QuickCom when the labor, like assuming India develops and we become a rich country, when the cost of labor increases, we don't know. Then we'll figure, right? I mean, that is a battle that we'll probably have to think about 10 to 15 years from now. But till then, this format is here to stay. But we could have drones then. But I digress. So I would say, so that becomes an extremely critical distribution point for us, without question, a very critical distribution point. But other than that, I think being present at modern trade and being present in the legacy e-com platforms is also very important. And I feel when it comes to FMCG products, particularly food products, the point of trial is always a brick and mortar store. When you're going to the airport or the railway station and you stop somewhere and you're like, let me try this, you give it a look and feel. So the point of trial is that, and that's when you lock in, and then you get repeat orders on e-com channels. So that's how we're looking at the distribution.
So, how has long form of writing shaped your leadership lens? You're working in such a high stakes environment, and so do you think that your interest in writing has transformed the way you lead?
Oh yeah. Because what writing does is it helps you figure out how to think. So if you're someone who writes a lot, which I am not doing right now, I used to write a lot more than I do now, and that is something I need to correct.
Yes.
But yeah, if you're someone who's writing all the time, that means your thoughts are clear, your thoughts are more organized. Till the time you don't put the thought to paper, it's just a muddle.
Of course.
Right. And everyone knows it. Even when people journal, they get clarity that they might not even get by going to a therapist, right? When you journal it clearly, what is bothering you, why are you so anxious, why are you so fearful, or why are you so guilty, etc., whatever is bothering you, right? So I think that is an extremely important skill that at some level all of us should adopt, right? So in that sense, yes. But the other thing that writing has done for me is because I've always contributed, uh, and I've always tried to contribute to financial dailies and long form magazines like the Caravan, and financial dailies like the ET and all of that. Is uh, you tend to so there is a lot of research that goes in before you pen something down, right? And what this has allowed me to do is to figure my own thoughts about it. So you're
and
reading
also research about it
and research about it. So
Yeah, of
you're
course.
reading all these books as part of a preparation to, let's say, write a long form piece on manufacturing, right? How to develop, let's say, a manufacturing ecosystem in India. What is that India is not doing that China used to do? So you're reading a few books on it, you're doing a whole lot of research on it, and you're putting it together in a grand essay, and then you're filtering it out, right? And that is a great process because it's organized your mind, and then you know exactly what you're talking about. And then you can, sort of go anywhere, talk about it, argue about it. It's a great exercise, generally, from a personal development point of view.
So when you think about long-term impact of Nuflower, what makes you the proudest?
Well, the fact that we are making products that are saving lives, number one. And number two, that the fact that we are actually building a world-class manufacturing company in India and exporting from India. Everything that we want a Make in India we want the Indian Make in India campaign to succeed in.
Do you believe that entrepreneurship in India today has to stretch beyond the economic ambition, which is towards something that looks more like nation building?
I think so. I think every part of the society, whether it's entrepreneurs, whether you're a factory worker, whether you're an office worker, or whether you're someone just, if you're a homemaker, I think you all have a role to play in society. And I think we need to conceive of our functions as beyond, just putting food on the table or just earning money, right? It needs to sort of fit into the national tapestry of things. And I think for entrepreneurs, the key is our social purpose is building in India and building India, right?
Okay. So if you weren't fighting malnutrition, what totally unexpected career would you pick? Wildlife photographer, writer, experimental chef, adventure travel guide?
So I'll be a writer, and I used to dance when I was in college a lot. So
Used
to, because it's something that you sort of let go gradually as life sort of takes over. But those are the two things.
Okay. Imagine you're stranded on a remote island, but still have to run your businesses.
Oh.
Okay. So, what three things would you absolutely need to keep things moving? No Wi-Fi allowed.
I would say a landline phone. I think that's pretty important. If there's no Wi-Fi, then at least you have a landline connection, right? And the question is, if I have to keep my businesses moving, right?
Of course.
Right. Yeah. So I would say the first thing is a landline phone. The second thing is a computer without the internet, without any Wi-Fi, but at least something that can do Excel sheets so that, if I have to calculate something or plan something, I have like a system to do it on. And the third would be, a journal and a pen and my thoughts. So I can journal, think about stuff, and write it down and create a plan of action for any situation.
Okay. What's one daily habit or life hack that helps you stay focused and productive, even when things get crazy?
Horizon planning. So it's basically that, let's say you target the peak of a mountain, but every time you look at the peak, it's really demotivating because you're like, dude, there's no way I can do that. So the way you overcome that is you just look at the immediate next step. And then you focus on that, and then you look at the immediate next step. So I learned about this in some podcast or some self-help book, which I can't remember, but I think it's helped me tremendously in life. Whenever I'm too nervous, like whenever it's a heavy week, when I'm just like, how am I going to get through this? Or there is this bit coming, or I have to do X or Y, or we've got a huge production run. All you need to do is focus on the next steps. right? Have the large goal in your mind. It's important to have big dreams, but don't just obsess over them, because then you will lose motivation. Because I mean, I
It's a
don't think,
marathon.
it's a marathon. I don't think anyone climbed the Mount Everest just looking at the peak. Like, I don't think that happened. They just looked at the next waypoint,
Yeah.
and then they just went on with their life. So that advice has really helped.
If you had to explain the future of nutrition in just one word, what would it be?
Low carb.
So AI is reshaping supply chains and nutrition programs alike. What's one decision you'd always trust your gut on, no matter what the data says?
And this especially applies to our B2C line of products, what the consumer wants,
Okay.
like what makes for a good product.
Mhm.
I think that's a very personal decision. And I think you can't survey that.
What's one old school tech or tool you secretly miss?
Hmm.
Could be anything from BlackBerry days to handwritten letters.
I think handwritten letters for sure. Now that you've mentioned them, because I think because I remember the last time I wrote handwritten letters was when I was in a boarding school, back when I was 13, 14, and the computers were there, the email and all had all been mainstream, but because you're in a boarding school, it's a very technology scarce environment, right? And we were always encouraged every Friday or Saturday to write a letter to our parents, and I think that just allows for a certain depth when you're putting pen to paper and just writing a nice letter to someone talking about your life and all. I think it allows for a certain depth in terms of what you're conveying, etc. Instead of the instant texting and quick emailing that passes for conversation now.
Okay. If CEOs had superpowers, what do you think yours would be? Master of crisis, visionary, connector, the ultimate multitasker, or anything else?
I would say visionary connector. That's probably it. Seeing patterns when none exist, because I think I have a unique experience mix. Like, I have a very unconventional bag. I'm no MBA guy. I'm a literary guy. Like I'm the kind of guy. I mean, I'm a huge history buff, right? And I'm manufacturer. I'm in nutrition, and I used to be a dancer. So there's a very eclectic experience mix, which makes you, I think, uniquely placed to see patterns in a way that others can't. I would say that would be a superpower. But to what extent, we'll find out.
Of course.
Yeah.
What's one book or podcast that's shaped your approach to entrepreneurship, leadership, or public health?
So as far as the business book is concerned, the one book that has really helped me is Peter Thiel's From Zero to One, Notes on Building the Future or something to that end. And I think the most important thing he says there, which I would sum it up, is being a Me Too in a large market is much, much more inferior than being someone special in a small target addressable market, right?
More like a red ocean versus blue ocean, sort of.
More like a blue ocean versus red ocean. Yeah. Right. Like, if you are launching something, and if it's just a Me Too, if it's just the same thing that everyone else is doing, then the only thing you can compete on is price and money.
Of course.
How much money you're throwing at it and whether you can be cheaper. Now, that may work for some, assuming you can get those volumes, but 99% of entrepreneurs don't start like that. They don't have a Tata or a Reliance or a Mahindra, like these big corporate houses backing them, right? So try to see a problem that no one else is fixing and try to fix that. So that could allow you to create a product that stands out. It's a moat in itself.
Okay, so last question.
Yeah.
So what is more stressful, last mile delivery hiccup or international compliance audit? You wouldn't know the previous one. No?
I would say international compliance audit. Between the two, yes. Because delivery hiccup is something, it shouldn't happen, but it's very easily rectifiable.
It's also operations.
And it's also operations driven. And but a compliance audit, and I would not, and more than compliance audit, a GMP audit, like a quality, good manufacturing practices audit. That is one of the central events every year in our company. When our clients come and they want to see our systems, processes, our team. So it does get stressful, but we ace it.
Of course. So thank you, Akshat, for coming to our podcast. It was amazing to learn so much about your industry, which we didn't know earlier. None of the audience did. So thank you again.
Yeah, no, it's great to be here, man. It was great. And I always like talking about what we're doing. So don't worry about it.
So we have come to the end of a podcast, and we learned so much about the nutritional manufacturing industry and what happens all across the world, and so many compliances, so many technology innovations as well. And till then, till the next time, keep yourself healthy, eat lots of low carb, high protein food, and we'll explore more industries and see different gaps and opportunities for you to innovate on. So, see you then.